is a political commentator, media analyst, and columnist, and based in Beijing. Jamie, welcome to the mother of all talk shows. Tell us, if you will, how the story of the weather balloon is being covered in China, and what do the Chinese people know about it that we don't yet know?
Hi, George. Thank you for having me on the show. I'd just like to say, first of all, sorry to you and your audience last week for not being able to join on the Sunday show.
Not at all.
So the Chinese spy balloon story. Well, if you'll forgive the pun, George, it's nothing but hot air, and we can see this from the rhetoric that's being used from the US government, the actions taken by the US government, and the narratives pushed by the media. Now, the language is key. So if we look at what the US government said versus what the media have said, the US government was very careful to talk to say surveillance. They carefully labeled it a surveillance balloon. The spy balloon that only came into public consciousness because of this wall-to-wall fear-mongering campaign orchestrated by the US media. Now, this is key because although surveillance and spying can be used interchangeably, the key difference is what is being surveilled. So you can have benevolent forms of surveillance. For example, you can have public health surveillance. You can have weather surveillance. Spying, on the other hand, is the act of collecting sensitive and secret information by covert means. Now, this is key because the US government, they admitted that this balloon presented no military intelligence or physical threat to people on the ground. Now, look, if the US government seriously believed that this was a Chinese spy balloon, they would have blown it out of the sky the moment it entered US airspace. In fact, they would have done this perhaps even before it entered US airspace, because we know the US government doesn't have so many issues with launching missiles in another country's territory. So this wouldn't have been allowed to enter into Alaska. It wouldn't have been allowed to cross across Canada. It wouldn't have been allowed to go state after state after state. If we look at the narratives being used of why this wasn't shot down immediately, they said, "Oh, we was concerned about the debris field." Well, that's quite a stark admission, because what they're saying is the greatest danger posed by this is not the collection of sensitive or secret materials. The greatest danger is the threats to civilians on the ground if we blow it up. Now, if it was actually collecting sensitive secret information that could be used against to harm the American people, they could say they would have taken the position that it's the lesser of two evils. The best thing to do is to shoot it down immediately and deal with the civilian casualties afterwards. So that's why I say, George, the Chinese spy balloon story is it's an exercise in propaganda. It has been cynically used by the media and the US government to stoke up fear and drive this China threat narrative, which is being used in turn build up military and alliances around China's shores, which we just seen earlier this week in the likes of the Philippines and Japan.
I discovered at least, maybe you knew it before me, but I discovered yesterday that the Chinese government had been in touch with the American government throughout the slow and stately, somewhat beautiful progress of this big white weather balloon across the United States. They never tried to conceal that it was their balloon. They explained how it had gone off course. They tried to help the United States in anticipation of what course the winds were likely to take it upon. And yet, quite the contrary impression was given by the media and the political class in the United States. It wasn't taken all that seriously in Europe, which may be an illustration of Oscar Wilde's a famous statement that we are two countries divided by a common language. It was regarded more of a joke in Europe, but it was taken deadly serious as an act of war in the United States, when of course it was anything but. Actually, technically, the only act of war was in shooting down a Chinese peaceful, unarmed aircraft down over Montana.
Well, that's right, George. So, like you say, the Chinese government was in contact with Washington throughout, advising them, trying to lower down the tensions and, as they resolve this matter, as I say, peacefully, calmly. But the US obviously had resolved to shoot it out of the sky once it left, once it was over shallow waters off the coast of America. But in regards, we see this is part of the US is essentially at war with China. A couple of years ago, we could say that it was just a trade war. However, now under the Biden administration, it's quite clearly Trump's trade war has exploded into a full-blown Cold War. Now, the US Cold War against China has crucially four components. It has an economic component, it has a military component, it has a ideological component, and it also has the propaganda component. Now, just to quickly run through these, on the economic front, we see the Biden administration has advanced Trump's trade war, say sanctions, technology restrictions, etc. On the ideological front, we've seen when US President Joe Biden first gave his address as President of the United States, he talked about that this is a battle between democracies and autocracies. So he was there and then essentially trying to divide the world into two ideological blocks, two Cold War blocks. And then when he went to the G7 meeting and his first international platform, he used the G7 to rally this new coalition of the willing. And then we can see this going into the military front. So on the military front, we've seen the US recruit the UK and Australia as junior partners in this AUKUS military arrangement. We see the Quad. We see greater ties with Japan. And also we see NATO now, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, now talking about China, and over the next 10 years, the next decade, it's going to be focusing on China. So this is what we see. That's the economic front, the ideological front, the military front, and crucially, the propaganda front. Now, the reason why I'm so concerned about the propaganda front is because I'm not so concerned about, say, the US's actions militarily, these alliances, etc., because I'm not surprised. It's like it would almost be akin to getting angry, getting upset at a dog for barking or water for being wet. The US government is, as I say, war is in its DNA, and people understand this. However, the media. We have a belief in the media that they are there to hold power to account, not to act as cheerleaders for war. But unfortunately, this is exactly what we're seeing. Everything that China does is being used, is being framed through a China threat narrative. We see the US and Japan, they increase military, as I say, alliance. And it's always to respond to the China threat. The UK did the same with Japan. Just last week, the US has is planning to open 4 new military bases in the Philippines, and that brings the total to 9. It has a collection of bases in Japan, a collection of bases in South Korea. So all of this, the media is framing the US as some benevolent force in responding to the China threat. However, we can see who is the real threat. But unfortunately, the media has resolved to take a different approach.
Well, only an idiot would believe that the United States was a benevolent force. Unfortunately, there are quite a lot of idiots, and most of them have got at least a dozen Twitter accounts each under their control. There are paid trolls, of course, and I'm only astonished at the low grade of those paid trolls. I suppose it's a sign of the times. Once upon a time, we used to employ James Bonds. Now we employ, I don't know, Bernard Mannings or Austin Powers. We've gone way low grade. We've gone low rent in the kind of people that we've got acting for us nowadays. But anyone in their right mind knows that China doesn't have military bases around us. It's we that have got military bases around them. That their navy is not sailing around us. It's our navy that's sailing around them. Indeed, it would be good if the British Navy was sailing around us, because then we'd be able to stop these 65,000 illegal migrants arriving from France, just 27 miles off the coast. Instead, we're patrolling the South China Sea instead of the English Channel. Everyone with a brain can see what's going on. And so that's why the propaganda investment has been made. It's also why people like you and me soon have got to be working in China or somewhere like it, because they simply can't bear to have people like you tell the truth here in Britain. Am I right?
Well, that's right, George. That's completely right. The British media probably wouldn't like to, as they employ you or I, particularly to talk about, as a China matters. I looked at this. What was it? On the anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China. Now, you just look. You have to look at who the media gave platform to. So, the Wall Street Journal gave a platform to a former board member at the National Endowment of Democracy. Now, we all know what that outfit is all about. This CNBC gave a platform to a senior person at the Atlantic Council. Foreign Affairs went with the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, and The Guardian went with somebody from the Lowy Institute. Now, universities are packed with China experts, scholars, media scholars, let's say China scholars, and they didn't. They went with ideologues. They went with people who will bang the drums of war, and I thought that was extremely key. So no, you're right. The UK media, the Western media in general, the corporate media in general, they're not going to give platforms to people who criticize, who deviate too far away from the official narrative. And the official narrative, unfortunately, that's being pushed is China is the number one threat. Just as Iraq and Afghanistan were the number one threat post 9/11, we, the public, were being lied to. China is not the number one threat. China does not have bases surrounding the US or the UK or Europe for that matter. China is interested in trading with the world. They say this is what we see in the Belt and Road Initiative. They're building infrastructure while the US and is building military alliances and bases.
Well, I think the best answer I ever heard from a Chinese official was, we are well aware that the United States could destroy China many times over. We are content that China can destroy the United States only once. I thought that as an example of Chinese savoir-faire and understatement, that was absolutely perfect. Now tell me this, and I'm sure all of our viewers will be asking. first of all, they'll have worked out that you're some class of Liverpudlian. And secondly, they'll be asking, how come you're in Beijing working?
Well, yeah, that's right. As born and brought up in Merseyside, and I studied at the University of Liverpool, and that's where I met a wonderful and beautiful Chinese woman, and that changed my path. And I had no intention of coming to China. Say before I met this wonderful woman.
系统遇到点小问题，请检查配置是否成功。 或者稍后再来试试吧。
Is that her giving you a row? No.
I'm very sorry for that, George. I do apologise. So yes, that was what happened. I met a wonderful, beautiful woman, and I came to Beijing without knowing any language whatsoever, and that was my story. And then, as I began to work as an English editor and a columnist, my preferred choice of topics to cover is mainly US-China relations, geopolitics, the shifting world order. We're obviously, as you know, we're moving into a multipolar world order right now, and that is what the US is obviously concerned about. And also, I've been forced to combat obvious media propaganda when it comes to China, because as I'm deeply concerned about the narratives which are being pushed into people's consciousness, particularly amongst the young people. That this is who I'd like to try to speak to. Please just educate yourself on the art of propaganda. We're being lied to. China's not the number one threat, and if you are interested in, say, looking into the art of propaganda, a good place to start would be with Noam Chomsky's and Edward Herman's propaganda model. And yeah, it's just look into propaganda and how it's being used. Your consent is being manufactured, and yeah.
Yeah, they don't even seek our consent, but they do implicitly have the consent of many. It doesn't take many sheepdogs to round up a lot of sheep. Are you Liverpool or Everton?
Liverpool. I'm a Red.
Well, your team's sinking fast. I'm sorry
Indeed.
to say. Now, listen, I'll be in China next month. Make sure you hook up with me. Jamie Wright,
oh, fantastic,
thank
George.
you very much indeed for joining us in the mother of all talk shows.